Dracula by Bram Stoker. Read for Mermaids by Gabriel Solstricker. Chapter 11. Lucy Westenra's Diary, 12th of September. How good they all are to me. I quite love that dear Dr. Van Helsing. I wonder why he was so anxious about these flowers. He positively frightened me, he was so fierce. And yet he must have been right, for I feel comfort from them already. Somehow I do not dread being alone tonight, and I can go to sleep without fear. I shall not mind any flapping outside the window. Oh, the terrible struggle that I have had against sleep so often of late. The pain of the sleeplessness, or the pain of the fear of sleep, with such unknown horrors as it has been for me. How blessed are some people whose lives have no fears, no dreads, to whom sleep is a blessing that comes nightly and brings nothing but sweet dreams. Well, here I am tonight, hoping for sleep, and lying like Ophelia in the play, with virgin krantz and maiden struments. I never liked garlic before, but tonight it is delightful. There is peace in its smell. I feel sleep coming already. Good night, everybody. Dr. Seward's Diary, 13th of September. Called at the Berkeley and found Van Helsing, as usual, up to time. The carriage ordered from the hotel was waiting. The professor took his bag, which he always brings with him now. Let all be put down exactly. Van Helsing and I arrived at Hillingham at 8 o'clock. It was a lovely morning. The bright sunshine and all the fresh feeling of early autumn seemed like the completion of nature's annual work. The leaves were turning to all kinds of beautiful colors, but had not yet begun to drop from the trees. When we entered, we met Miss Westenra coming out of the morning room. She is always an early riser. She greeted us warmly and said, "You'll be glad to know that Lucy is better. The dear child is still asleep. I looked into her room and saw her, but did not go in lest I should disturb her." The professor smiled and looked quite jubilant. He rubbed his hands together and said, I thought I diagnosed the case. My treatment is working." To which she answered, "You must not take all the credit yourself, Doctor. Lucy's state this morning is part and due to me." "How do you mean, Mum?" asked the professor. "Well, I was anxious about the dear child in the night, and went into her room. She was sleeping soundly, so soundly that my coming did not wake her, but the room was awfully stuffy. There were a lot of those horrible strong-smelling flowers about everywhere. She had a bunch of them around her neck. I feared the heavy odor would be too much for the child in her weak state, so I took them all away and opened a bit of the window to let in a little fresh air. You will be pleased with her, I'm sure." She moved off to her boudoir, where she usually breakfasted early. When she had spoken, I watched the professor's face and saw it turn ashen grey. He had been able to retain his self-command while the poor lady was present, for he knew her state and how mischievous a shock would be. He actually smiled upon her as she held open the door for her to pass into the room. But the instant she had disappeared, he pulled me suddenly and forcibly into the dining room and closed the door. For the first time in my life, I saw Van Helsing break down. He raised his hands over his head in a sort of mute despair, and then beat his palms together in a helpless way. Finally, he sat down on a chair, putting his hands before his face, began to sob with loud, dry sobs that seemed to come from the very racking of his heart. Then he raised his arms again, as though appealing to the whole universe. "God," he said, "what have we done? What has that poor thing done that we are so sore beset? Is there fate amongst us still, sent down from the pagan world of old? That such things must be, and in such way. This poor mother, all unknowing, and all for the best that she think, does such thing as lose her daughter, body and soul. We must not tell her, we must not even warn her, or she die and then both die. Oh, how we are beset! How are all the powers of the devils against us?" Suddenly he jumped to his feet. "Come," he said, "come, we must see and act. Devils or no devils, or all the devils at once, it matters not. We fight him all the same." He went to the hall door for his bag, and together we went up to Lucy's room. Once again, I drew the blind, whilst Van Helsing went towards the bed. This time, he did not start as he looked upon the poor face with the same awful, waxen pallor as before. He wore a look of stern sadness and infinite pity. "As I expected," he murmured, with that hissing inspiration of his which meant so much. Without a word, he went and locked the door, and then began to set out on the little table the instruments for yet another operation of the transfusion of blood. I had long ago recognized the necessity and begun to take off my coat, but he stopped me with a warning hand. "No," he said, "today you must operate. I shall provide. You are weakened already." As he spoke, he took off his coat and rolled up his shirt sleeve. Again the operation, again the narcotic, again some return of the colour to the ashy cheeks, and the regular breathing of healthy sleep. This time I watched, whilst Van Helsing himself recruited himself and rested. I would say, Stoker uses the word recruited. Yeah, recruited himself. I need to look that up. I think that's a definition of that word that we don't really use anymore. But anyway, back to the story. Presently, he took an opportunity of telling Miss Westenra that she must not remove anything from Lucy's room without consulting him, that the flowers were of medicinal value, and that the breathing of their odour was part of the system of cure. But he took over the care of the case himself, saying he would watch this night and the next, and would send me word when to come. After another hour, Lucy waked from her sleep, fresh and bright, and seemingly not much worse for her terrible ordeal. What does it all mean? I'm beginning to wonder if my long habit of life amongst the insane is beginning to tell. Lucy Westenra's diary, 17th of September. 4 days and nights of peace. I'm getting so strong again that I hardly know myself. It is as if I had passed through some long nightmare and had just awakened to see the beautiful sunshine and feel the fresh air of the morning around me. I have a dim half-remembrance of long, anxious times of waiting and fearing, darkness in which there was not even the pain of hope to make present distress more poignant, and then long spells of oblivion and the rising back to life as a diver coming up through a great press of water. Since, however, Dr. Van Helsing has been with me, all this bad dreaming seems to have passed away. The noises that used to frighten me from my wits, The flapping against the windows, the distant voices which seemed so close, and the harsh sounds that came from I know not where, and commanded me to do I know not what, have all ceased. I go to bed now without any fear of sleep. I do not try to keep awake. I've grown quite fond of the garlic, and a boxful arrives for me every day from Harlem. Tonight, Dr. Van Helsing is going away, for he has to be for a day in Amsterdam. But I need not be watched. I'm well enough to be left alone. Thank God for Mother's sake, and dear Arthur's, and for all our friends who have been so kind. I shall not even feel the change. For last night, Dr. Van Helsing slept in his chair a lot of the time. I found him asleep twice when I awoke, but I did not fear to go to sleep again, though the boughs or bats or something napped almost angrily against the window panes. The Pall Mall Gazette, 18th of September. The Escaped Wolf, Perilous Adventure of Our Interviewer. Interviewer with the keeper in the Zoological Gardens. After many inquiries, and almost as many refusals, and perpetually using the words Pall Mall Gazette as a sort of talisman, I managed to find the keeper of the section of the Zoological Gardens in which the wolf department is included. Thomas Builder lives in one of the cottages in the enclosure behind the elephant house, and was just sitting down to tea when I found him. Thomas and his wife are hospitable folk, elderly, without children, and if the specimen I enjoyed of their hospitality to be of the average kind, their lives must be pretty comfortable. The keeper would not enter on what he called business until the supper was over, and we were all satisfied. Then, when the table was cleared, and he had lit his pipe, he said, "Now, sir, you can go on and ask me what you want. You'll excuse me refusing to talk of professional subjects before meals. I give the wolves and the jackals and the hyenas in all our section their tea before I begins to ask them questions." "How do you mean, ask them questions?" I queried, wishful to get into a talkative humour. "Hitting over their head with a pole is one of their way, scratching of their ears is another. When gents as is flush wants a bit of shout off to their gals. I don't so mind the fuss. The hitting of a pole before I chucks them their dinner, but I waits till they've had their sherry and coffee, so to speak, before I tries on with the ear scratching. Mind you," he added philosophically, "there's a deal of the same nature in us as in their animals. Here's you a coming and asking me questions about my business, and I that grumpy like, only for your bloomin' £half, I'd seen you blowed first for an answer. Not even when you asked me sarcastic like, if I'd like you to ask the superintendent if you might ask me questions. What offence did I tell you to go to hell?" "You did. And when you said you'd report me for using of obscene language that was going to hit me over the head, but then the £half made me all right. I were to go into fight, so I waited for the food, and did with my owl as the wolves and the lions and tigers does. But I love your art, and the old human has stuck a chunk of her tea cake in me, and rinsed me up with her bloomin' old teapot, and I've lit up, and you may scratch my ears for all you're worth, and you won't give in a growl out of me. Drive along with your questions. I know what you're coming at. There escaped wolf." "Exactly. I want you to give me your view of it. Just tell me how it happened, and when I know the facts, I'll get you to say what you consider was the cause of it, how you think the whole affair will end." "All right, Governor. This here about the old story. Incidentally, I haven't done accents really for the book so far, but this is written in a very dense kind of the way in which it's written. So I'm gonna like, I'm not gonna go nuts with it, but I might have to just do a little bit of it. So I'm not great with accents, but I'll do my best. Alright, Governor, this here about the old story. That our wolf is what we call a berserker. Was one of the 3 grey ones that came from Norway to Jamrix, which we bought off him 4 years ago. He was a nice, well-behaved wolf, never gave no trouble to talk of. I'm more surprised at him wanting to get outlaw any animal in this place. But there, you can't trust wolves no more than women. Don't you mind him, sir, broke in Mrs. Tom with a cheery laugh. He's got a mind of the animals so long that blessed if he ain't like an old wolf himself. But there ain't no harm in him. Well, sir, it was about 2 hours after feeding yesterday when I first heard my disturbance. I was making up a litter in the monkey house for a young puma, which is ill. But when I heard the yelping and howling, I came away straight. There was a berserker tearing like a mad thing at the bars, as if he wanted to get out. There wasn't much people about that day, and close at hand was only one man. A tall, thin chap with an hooked nose and pointed beard, and a few white hairs running through it. He had a hard, cold look in his red eyes. I sort of took a mislike to him, for it seemed as if it was him they was irritated at. He had white kid gloves on his hands, and he pointed out the animals to me and says, "Keeper." He pointed out the animals to me and says, "Keeper, those wolves seem upset at something." "Maybe it's you," says I, for I didn't look like the airs he'd give himself. He didn't get angry as I hoped he would, but he smiled a kind of insolent smile with a mouthful of sharp, white teeth. "Oh no, they wouldn't like me," he says. "Oh yes, they would," says I, imitating them. "They always likes a bone or two to clean their teeth about tea time, but you has as a bagful." Well, it was an odd thing. For when the animals sees us talking, they lay down. When I went over to Berserker, he let me stroke his ears the same as ever. That there man came over and blessed, but if he didn't put his hand and stroke the old wolf's ears too. "Take care," says I. "Berserker is real quick." "Never mind," he says. "I'm used to him." "Are you in the business yourself?" I says, taking off my hat. For a man what trades in wolves, etc., is a good friend to keepers. "No," says he, "not exactly in the business, but I've made pets of several." And with that he lifts his hat, as polite as a lord, and walks away. Old Berserker kept a looking after him until he was out of sight, and went and lay down in a corner, and wouldn't come out the whole evening. Well, last night, so soon as the moon was up, the wolves began howling. There weren't nothing for them to howl at. There weren't no one near, except someone that was evidently a-calling a dog somewheres out the back of the gardens on Park Road. Once or twice I went out to see that all was right, and it was, and then the howling stopped. Just before 12 o'clock, I just took a look round, before turning in, bust me, when I came opposite Berserker's cage and I see the rails broken and twisted, about the cage empty. And that's all I know for certain. Did anyone else see anything? One of our gardeners was coming home about that time from an harmony, when he sees a big grey dog coming through the garden edges. At least so he says, but I don't give it much from myself. For if he did, he never said a word about it to his missus when he got to me, and it was only after the escape of the wolf was made known. We'd been up all night hunting a park for the berserker, and when he remembered seeing anything, my unbelief is the harmony had got to his head. Thank you for the follow, Jazzy James and Hound Graham. Great to have you in chat. Now, Mr. Builder, can you account in any way for the escape of the wolf? Well, sir, he said, with a suspicious... Well, sir, he said, with a suspicious sort of modesty. I don't think I can, but I don't know how you'd be satisfied with the theory. Certainly I shall. If a man like you, who knows from animals from experience, can't hazard a good guess at this rate, who is even to try? Well then, sir, I accounts for it this way. It seems to me that wolf escaped simply because he wanted to get out. From the hearty way that both Thomas and his wife laughed at the joke, I could see that it had done service before, and that the whole explanation was simply an elaborate sell. I couldn't cope in badinage with the worthy Thomas, but I thought I knew a surer way to his heart, so I said, Now, Mr. Builder, we'll consider that first half-sovereign worked off, and this brother of his is waiting to be claimed when you've told me what you think will happen. Right you are, sir, he said briskly. You'll excuse me, I know for a chef in here, but the old woman here winked at me, which was as much telling me to go on. Well, I never, said the old lady. My opinion is this. That wolf is hiding off somewheres. The gardener one didn't remember he was a galloping northward faster than a horse could go, but I don't believe him. For you, sir, see, wolves don't gallop no more than dogs does. They're not been built that way. Wolves is fine things in a storybook. I dare say when they get in packs and does be chivying something, it's more a fear than they can make of a devil of a noise and chop it up. Whatever it is. But Lord bless you, in real life a wolf is only a low creature, not half so clever or bold as a good dog, and not half a quarter as much fighting him. This one ain't been used to be fighting or be providing for himself. More likely he's somewhere around the park hiding and shivering, and if he thinks at all, wondering where he is to get his breakfast from. Maybe he's cut down some area and is in a coal cellar. My eye. Won't some cook get a rum start when she sees his green eyes shining at her out the dark? If he can't get food, he's bound to look for it. Mayhap he might chance the light on a butcher's shop in time. If he doesn't, some nursemaid goes off a walk-in with a soldier, leaving the infant in the perambulator. Well, I shouldn't be surprised if the census is one babby the less. That's all. I was handing him the half-sovereign when something came bobbing up against the window, and Mr. Builder's face doubled its natural length with surprise. God bless me, he said, if there ain't old Berserker come back by yourself. He went to the door and opened it, a most unnecessary proceeding it seemed to me. I've always thought that a wild animal never looks so well as when some obstacle of pronounced durability is between us. A personal experience has intensified rather than diminished that idea. After all, however, there was nothing like custom, for neither the builder nor his wife thought any more of the wolf than I should of a dog. The animal itself was peaceful and well behaved, as that father of all picture wolves, Red Riding Hood's quondam and friend, whilst moving a confidence in masquerade. The whole scene was an unutterable mixture of comedy and pathos. The wicked wolf for half a day had paralysed London, and set all the children in the town shivering in their shoes, and there was a sort of penitent mood, and was received and petted like a sort of vulpine prodigal son. Old Builder examined him all over with the most tender solicitude, and when he had finished with his penitence said, "There, I knew the poor old chap would get into some kind of trouble. Didn't I say all along? He's his head all cut and full of broken glass. He's been a-getting over some bloomin' wall or another. It's a shame some people are allowed to top their walls with broken bottles. This is what comes of it. Come along, Berserker." He took the wolf and locked him up in a cage with a piece of meat that satisfied, in quantity at any rate, the elementary conditions of the fatted calf, and went off to report. I came to report the only exclusive information that is given today regarding the strange escapade at the zoo. Dr. Seward's Diary, 17th of September. I was engaged after dinner in my study posting up books, which, through press of other work and the many visits to Lucy, had fallen sadly into arrear. Suddenly the door was burst open, and in rushed my patient with his face distorted with passion. I was thunderstruck, for such a thing as a patient getting his own accord into the superintendent's study is almost unknown. Without an instant's pause, he made straight at me. He had a dinner knife in his hand, and as I saw he was dangerous, I tried to keep a table between us. He was too quick and too strong, for before I could get my balance, he had struck at me and cut my left wrist severely. Before he could strike again, however, I got him my right, and he was sprawling on his back on the floor. My wrist bled freely, and quite a little pool trickled onto the carpet. I saw my friend was not intent on further effort, and occupied myself binding up my wrist, keeping a wary eye on the prostrate figure all the time. When the attendants rushed in and we turned our attention to him, his employment positively sickened me. He was lying on his belly on the floor, licking up, like a dog, the blood which had fallen from my wounded wrist. He was easily secured, and, to my surprise, went with the attendants quite placidly, seemingly repeating over and over again, "The blood is the life." I cannot afford to lose blood just at present. I have lost too much of it of late for my physical good, and then the prolonged strain of Lucy's illness and its horrible phases is telling on me. I am overexcited and weary, and I need to rest. Happy Van Helsing has not summoned me, so I need not forego my sleep. Tonight I could not do well without it. Telegram, Van Helsing, Antwerp, to Seward, Carfax. Sent to Carfax, Sussex, as no county given, delivered late by 22 hours. 17th of September. Do not fail to be at Hillingham tonight. If not watching all the time frequently, visit and see that flowers are placed. Very important, do not fail. Shall be with you as soon as possible after arrival. Dr. Seward's Diary, 18th of September. Just off for train to London. The arrival of Van Helsing's telegram filled me with dismay. A whole night lost, and I know by bitter experience what may happen in a night. Of course, it is possible that all may be well, but what may have happened? Surely there is some horrible doom hanging over us, that every possible accident should thwart us in all we try to do. I should take the cylinder with me, and I could complete my entry on Lucy's phonograph. Memorandum left by Lucy Westenra, 17th of September, night. I write this and leave it to be seen, so that no one may any chance get into trouble through me. This is an exact record of what took place tonight. I feel I am dying of weakness and have barely the strength to write, but it must be done if I die in the doing. I went to bed as usual, taking care that the flowers were placed as Dr. Van Helsing directed, and soon fell asleep. I was waked by the flapping at the window, which had begun after that sleepwalking on the cliff at Whitby when Mina saved me, and which I now know so well. I was not afraid, but did wish that Dr. Seward was in the next room, as Dr. Van Helsing said he would be, so that I might have called him. I tried to go to sleep, but could not. Then there came to me the old fear of sleep, and I determined to keep awake. Perversely, sleep would try to come, and when I did not want it, so as I feared to be alone, I opened my door and called out, "Is there anybody there?" There was no answer. I was afraid to wake Mother, and so closed my door again. But outside in the shrubbery, I heard a sort of howl like a dog's, but more fierce and deeper. I went to the window and looked out, but could see nothing, except a big bat, which had evidently been buffeting its wings against the window. So I went back to bed again, and determined not to go to sleep. Presently the door opened, and Mother looked in. Seeing by my moving that I was not asleep, came in and sat with me. She said to me even more sweetly and softly than her wont, "I was uneasy about you, darling, and came to see that you were all right." I feared she might catch cold sitting there, and I asked her to come in and sleep with me, so she came into bed and lay down beside me. She did not take off her dressing gown, for she said she would only stay a while, and then go back to her own bed. And as she lay there in my arms and I in hers, the flapping and buffeting came to the window again. She was startled, a little frightened, and cried out, "What is that?" I tried to pacify her, and at last succeeded, and she lay quiet, but I could hear her poor heart still beating terribly. After a while there was the lower howl again out in the shrubbery, and shortly after there was a crash at the window, and a lot of broken glass was hurled on the floor. The window blew back with the wind that rushed in, and in the aperture of the broken panes there was the head of a gaunt, great, grey wolf. Mother cried out in fright and struggled up into a sitting posture, clutched wildly at anything that could help her. Amongst other things, she clutched the wreath of flowers that Dr. Van Helsing insisted on my wearing round my neck, and tore it away from me. For a second or two, she sat up, pointing at the wolf, and there was a strange and horrible gurgling in her throat. Then she fell over, as if struck by lightning, and her head hit my forehead and made me dizzy for a moment. The room, all round, seemed to spin. I kept my eyes fixed on the window, but the wolf drew his head back, and a whole myriad of little specks seemed to come blowing in through the broken window, wheeling and circling around, like the pillar of dust that travellers describe when there is a simoon in the desert. I tried to stir, but there was some spell upon me, and dear Mother's poor body, which seemed to grow cold already, for a dear heart had ceased to beat, weighed me down. I remembered no more for a while. time did not seem long, but very, very awful, till I recovered consciousness again. Somewhere near, a passing bell was tolling. The dogs all round the neighbourhood were howling, and in our shrubbery, seemingly just outside, a nightingale was singing. I was dazed and stupid with pain and terror and weakness, but the sound of the nightingale seemed like the voice of my dead mother come back to comfort me. The sounds seemed to have awakened the maids, for I could hear their bare feet pattering outside my door. I called to them, and they came in, and when they saw what had happened, and what it was that lay over me on the bed, they screamed out. The wind rushed in through the broken window, and the door slammed to. They lifted off the body of my dear mother and laid her covered with a sheet on the bed after I had got up. They were all so frightened and nervous that I directed them to go to the dining room and each have a glass of wine. The door flew open for an instant and closed again. The maids shrieked and then went in a body to the dining room, and I laid what flowers I had on my dear mother's breast. When they were there, I remembered what Dr. Van Helsing had told me, but I didn't like to remove them, and besides, I would have some of the servants to sit with me now. I was surprised that the maids did not come back. I called to them, but got no answer, so I went to the dining room to look for them. My heart sank when I saw what had happened. They, all four, lay helpless on the floor, breathing heavily. The decanter of sherry was on the table half full, but there was a queer, acrid smell about. I was suspicious and examined the decanter. It smelt of laudanum. Looking on the sideboard, I found that the bottle which the mother's doctor uses for her, did use, was empty. What am I to do? I'm back in the room with mother. I cannot leave her, and I am alone, save for the sleeping servants, whom someone has drugged, alone with the dead. I dare not go out, for I can hear the low howl of the wolf through the broken window. The air seems full of specks, floating and circling in the draught from the window, and the lights burn blue and dim. What am I to do? God shield me from harm this night. I shall hide this paper in my breast, where they shall find it when they come to lay me out. My dear mother has gone. It is time that I go too. Goodbye, dear Arthur, if I should not survive this night. God keep you, dear, and God help me. And this concludes chapter 11. So I'm just going to turn the music down. I'll just summarize what's been going on with these streams and what's going on with reading Dracula like this. So for the spooky month of October, I am doing various spooky streams. These are all in aid of the charity Mermaids. And Mermaids is a charity that is dedicated to supporting trans, non-binary and gender diverse youth. They have a range of different initiatives, really kind of fantastic things they do. For example, they have a phone number that young people can call for advice. They advocate for trans and non-binary people in society, which is a great thing these days because, let's face it, society is doing a lot of things to make life difficult for trans people, for no good reason. They also support families of trans young people, where perhaps their parents need guidance. Perhaps they want to support their children, but if they've not been through adolescence as a trans person themselves, they might want a bit of support and some advice to help kind of, give their teen, I guess, the support that they need. So all in all, fantastic charity is why I chose to support them for October. And yeah, so for the people in the chat, the link to the Tiltify is there. And if you're watching this on VOD, it will be in the description. Huge thanks to Sylvek the Owl and Kalashia Water, who have already donated. We've raised £100 now, and we're hoping to raise more for the end of October. But there's a £1,000 target mentioned on the campaign, but really don't worry about that. I just had to. It had to be a number, so I had to pick one. So I picked that as a number. But really, this is very much a situation where every penny makes a difference. So if you want to donate like a few bucks or a few pounds, that would be amazing. That would really help people, and mermaids would be so appreciative. But if you can't, if you're not fortunate enough to be in that position, no judgment. Things are difficult these days. Not everyone has money to donate to charity, and that's cool. But what I would say is, if there's anyone you think might be interested in the campaign, please put it in front of them, because the more eyeballs we can put that in front of, the more chance we have of raising more money for charity. And then finally, alternatively, if you can't do either of those things, just watching will hopefully bring more people into the stream, so then they will see the link, and then that will get us more donations as well and garner more support for mermaids. So whether you donate or spread the link or just simply watch, your support means the world. So in advance, on behalf of mermaids, thank you.